Hi Booktube, Aaron here, hope you're doing very well. Today I've got something of a shelf tour for you. I'm just going to show you one of my shelves, which is just this one here. If you look closely at the shelves behind me usually, you might be able to see there's a bit of a difference. Essentially what I've done is I've taken some of the books that were here upstairs, put them downstairs and created a sort of a mythology and sort of epics section, and then I got all of my Everyman's Library books together and decided to have a shelf where they all go together, and then I just got a few other editions that sort of seem to look nice together. So it's a rather nerdy and pretentious shelf, but I thought we'd go through it together just to see what it's like. So I think I'll get over to the other side of the camera and then we'll see how it looks. Okay, so here is the shelf all together. So we've got a nice row of Everyman's Library books and then some other editions from New York Review of Books, and just at the very end a couple of, or three Pushkin Press books. I thought we'd just go through all the way and show you what we have. So at the end, first up, have the Iliad by Homer. The first Everyman's Library book that I picked up, and it's really rather good. It's the it's the Fitzgerald translation. So here we go. This is an introduction by Gregory Nagy, but the Robert Fitzgerald translation of the Iliad, and this was my first foray into Homer and into the ancient Greeks. As I said earlier, I've got a sort of mythology section downstairs. However, I have another translation of the Iliad, so that's down there, and so this could come up here and live with the rest of the Everyman's Library books. Next up, we've got the Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikabu, and this is, let's have a look now. Here we go. So this is the Edward G. Seidensticker translation. I think there's at least one more recent translation out there, but from the first page that I sampled, I reckoned that will be fine enough for me, but I still need to get around to reading the Tale of Genji. And then one that I've sort of dipped in a little bit, but at some point I need to read just much more of this. This is the complete stories of Edgar Allan Poe. So this is just the short stories in his one novel. We've got an introduction at the beginning by Jonathan Steele, or Steely, and it's all right. This was one of the ones that I bought online, and it turned up a little dirty, shall we say, so I had to try and clean it up a little bit, but there's still a little bit of residual dirt on there. Next up, we've got some Toltoy. This is the Cossacks, and as you can see, it's a sort of commemorative special edition for the millennium, which is why it's got the Millennium Library on it. It used to be part of a library, the Cranford School Library, and so there are a few things that some kind of scars from that experience. There's another sticker in there. Sometimes they just tear out the page where the stamp will be stamping the dates and things, but they don't seem to have done anything like that. We've just got these things here. But this is the Maud translation. I've read their translation of War and Peace and of Anna Karenina as well, so I think I'll be fine with this for the Cossacks. And then you may have seen then that next up, there's even more Tolstoy. If we move this off the top, and it's the only Everyman's Library box set that I own. These are the collected short fictions of Leo Tolstoy in a lovely box set. Is it the same picture? Well, it's sort of a, there we go. And these are, yeah, they're rather good. We've got these are the only, I think these must be slightly newer editions, where it's got a portrait on the front. So then we've got a rather young, or at least middle-aged Tolstoy there for volume 1. And then we've got the slightly older, more wizened, more Santa Clausy Tolstoy for volume 2. And at some point I need to, like with Poe and like with, well, many of these, one thing I've realised from from moving these Everyman's Library books here is that I haven't actually read as many of them as I thought. Some of them I've dipped into from time to time, but with many of these I just haven't got round to them yet. And part of it is that a few of them were downstairs, but even then, some of them have been up here and I haven't got to them, so there are no excuses. Next up, one that I have actually read. This is one of my sort of go-to authors, really. This is Under Western Eyes by Joseph Conrad, a great sort of espionage book set in the sort of late 1800s, to do with Russian nihilists and anarchists, and it's really rather good. Lots of double crossing and subterfuge and stuff, but the first few chapters are really arresting, and they're sort of based on or inspired by his real historical events. Let's just slightly rotate around so we can see where we're about to go. Next up, another one of these big short story omnibuses. This is the collected stories of Ernest Hemingway. Again, I've dipped in from time to time, but haven't made a sort of systematic effort at getting through them. So at some point I'll have to do that. But that's the collected stories of Ernest Hemingway. And like with Edgar Allan Poe, I'm just trying to get some of the schmutz off. This one had, I bought online and it turned up quite dirty, and it had like cup rings from being used as a coaster for, you know, people putting their coffee cups on it. So it was absolutely covered in what I presume was coffee. Anyway, next up we have Budenbrooks by Thomas Mann. And Thomas Mann is one of those authors that I have made a concerted attempt to get as much by in the Everyman's Library editions as I can, just because I know that most of them, not all of them, but most of them, have him in the John E. Woods translation, as this one does. This is translated by John E. Woods, and we've got an introduction by T.J. Reid. This is Budenbrooks, his breakout debut that made his name, and it was really his, you know, it's like Radiohead with Creep. He couldn't escape it. Even when he'd written The Magic Mountain and Joseph and His Brothers, it was as amazing and momentous as those books are. And looking back, we see them as his masterpieces. I think it was, you know, when he got his Nobel Prize years and years later, it was Budenbrooks that the Nobel Committee were really, you know, giving him the prize in celebration of, which is interesting. But I still haven't read Budenbrooks. It's on the list. Some Thomas Mann that I have read, and the book that convinced me to get some more Thomas Mann in the Everyman's Library series is my favourite Thomas Mann and probably my favourite novel, and that's The Magic Mountain. Again, I think these must be the Everyman's sort of equivalent to the Penguin Modern Classics, with the red spine and the sort of black and white picture on the front. So this is The Magic Mountain, again the Johnny Wood translation, and it's really, really good. It's one of my favourite books, and just the object of this book itself I love, down to the foxing, which is just really lovely. The Joseph Conrad, let's go back to Conrad, that has some great foxing on it as well, or sort of the beginnings of some foxing, unless some paint has been spilled. I think that looks more like paint has been spilled on it, actually, if I'm honest. Speak of the Devil, next up is Joseph and His Brothers, which is technically a trilogy, but here we have a much older looking Thomas Mann there, and again the Johnny Wood translation. Yeah, and then the very last of these Everyman Library books here on my shelf is another one of these sort of omnibuses, and it is Albert Camus, and this has The Plague, The Fall, Exile and the Kingdom, and selected essays. So the essays in here are the Myth of Sisyphus, and Notes from the Guillotine, or something like that. Reflections on the Guillotine. So there we go. That's everything that's in there. I've only read the Myth of Sisyphus from this volume, and then I've read the Outsider, The Stranger, in a different volume. And I think Everyman's Library do have a separate, rather slim edition of The Stranger in the series. And then if I just move this so I don't destroy it, and that's the last of the Everyman's Library books. And then we'll move along just a little bit to the end there. And so I've filled up some space with some of these New York Review of Books editions. They just seemed equally pretentious and classy, I suppose. So first up, we have got Monsieur Proust by Celeste Alberet, with a foreword by Andre Aikman, or Acuman. I'm not entirely sure how to say that. And it's a whole cast of people here. So it's attributed to Celeste Alberet, as told to Georges Belmont, translated from the French by Barbara Bray, and then we have the foreword by Andre Aikman. I don't know. But yeah, a whole cast of people putting this book together, which is really lovely. And these are just reflections and memories of Proust's life as told by his caretaker, or housekeeper, I should say. I haven't read this yet, but it's one that I don't know, I want to make time for at some point, because I very much enjoy Proust. Next up, a book I'm in the middle of, and I've sort of put on pause at the moment just because I wanted to read other things, and it was just taking up space, too much space physically and in my reading life. And that's Robert Burton's The Anatomy of Melancholy, which on a sort of prose level is really rather lovely, but yeah, it's a lot, and it's also very odd. I'm just showing you some pages so that if you zoom in or something, you can kind of get an impression of the of the prose style and of the language at the time. But I really love this, the original frontispiece, which is a kind of an allegory, or a kind of key to the project. I'll put that away later because it seems like everything is falling over. Got a little Amorite there. Don't know if it'll zoom in on it, but there we are. Am I right? Yeah. Next up, we have a great little book, The Stronghold by Dino Buzzati, translated by Lawrence Venuti. Just a great book with this rising sense of dread and tension and of almost an existential crisis, but it's really rather good. I'd recommend it. The earlier translation of that is the title is different, so it's also known as the Tartar Steppe in earlier translations. Next up, another great short little thing. This is Down Below by Leonora Carrington, with an introduction by Marina Warner. And like with Celeste Albaret's Monsieur Proust, it's a sort of cast effort, although it doesn't really tell us on the title page. But essentially, Leonora Carrington, if I'm remembering correctly, Leonora Carrington told this story. It's a sort of a memoir of her time in a mental institution. And she told this story, I think, to a friend or a confidant and she told it to them in French. And then, if I remember correctly, she then sort of took the notes from the conversation and then translated them back into English or something like that. So there's a bit of a difference between the events themselves and then the actual text that we're reading, if that makes sense. It's not just someone sitting down and telling you what there's like. There's a distance of time and there's a distance of language, of it being sort of translated and then translated back, which makes the tone, the subject matter is quite dark, but I think it does make the tone a little less bright and playful, which in the Hearing Trumpet, a novel I read around the same time as reading this, there's a playfulness to the Hearing Trumpet that isn't really in here, but there's this helped me understand the kind of vulnerability to Carrington, which is all the way through the Hearing Trumpet as well. So I'd recommend this more than the Hearing Trumpet. I found it much more interesting. Let's slide that back in. We've got a few little short things. Next up, we've got The Invention of Morale by Adolfo Bioy Casares, with a prologue by Borges. This is, let's see if we can find it. Let's see. Translated by Ruth L.C. Sims. And as you, once again, we've got a cast effort because we've got Borges's prologue. Then we have Suzanne Jill Levine introducing the book, and then we have illustrations by Nora Borges de Torre. So again, a lovely cast effort for a lovely short little book about a man going to a seemingly deserted island and finding all these people that he can see, but they don't seem to be aware that he exists, and it goes on from there. It's rather good. Let's see if we can stop these from falling over. Probably not. Next up, and the last of these taller NYRB books, we have The Captain's Daughter by Alexander Pushkin, translated by Robert Chandler and Elizabeth Chandler. And this is really, really good. Really a great page turner. So I'd recommend it. I'm just showing you the back for no reason whatsoever. And then I just put a couple of the NYRB Poets series down here because I really like them, and needed to fill the whole shelf, and I thought it would be appropriate to put them there. First up, we have Guillaume Apollinaire Zone, his selected poems, translated by Ron Padgett, with an introduction by Peter Reed. I just love the way they feel, the way they look. They've always got a picture of the author on the back there, and it's a facing translation. So we've got, yeah, we've got both there. And somewhere there is a sort of almost not quite pictographic. I can't remember the way he described it. Yeah, here we go. So these sorts of poems that are just interesting shapes on the page. I'm sure there's some more somewhere, but I won't be able to find them at this point. But anyway, I like Apollinaire. He's good. Then Ossip Mandelstam, the Voronezh Notebooks. I really like this. Translated by Andrew Davis. But I really love this book. And there is Mandelstam on the back. So great poet writing in Russian there. And then another French poet, Pierre Reverdy. And this is a great group effort. So it's all edited by Mary Ann Cause. And then we have translations from John Ashbery, Dan Belm, Mary Ann Cause herself, Lydia Davis, Marilyn Hacker, Richard Howard, Jeffrey O'Brien, Frank O'Hara, Ron Padgett, Mark Polizzotti, Kenneth Rexroth, Richard Seiberth, Patricia Terry, and Rosanna Warren. And this is really, really good. There's Reverdy himself. And I love this book. It's one I come back to a lot. And then right at the very end, we've got 3 Pushkin Press books. The first of which is And the Earth Will Sit on the Moon, Essential Stories by Nikolai Gogol. And again, we've got something I love that Pushkin Press do is this. Sorry, I was just briefly interrupted. But anyway, something I love is this, just the portrait they do on this page, just next to the title page. So we've got some, Essential Stories by Gogol, translated by Oliver Ready or Reedy. I'm not entirely sure how he pronounces his surname. And we have got just some of his classic stories. We've got The Nose, Diary of a Madman, The Overcoat, Old World Landowner, and The Carriage. Those last 2 being a little less odd and surreal than Diary of a Madman and The Nose and The Overcoat, but are still very, very good. Then we've got some more poetry. These are the collected poems of Georg Trakl, Surrender to Night, and I think he was if I'm remembering correctly, a Czech poet. But again, we've got a picture there, selected and translated by Will Stone. I believe he was Czech. Let's double check that, shall we? Does it say there? No, it doesn't. But yeah, it's very, very good. So I would recommend him as well. There we are. Just to give you some information there. But there we are. I enjoyed them. Very, I suppose, what's the word? Crepuscular. These odd autumnal twilight poems. And then finally, the very last one is A Chess Story by Stefan Zweig. And again, we have a picture of the author there. This is translated by Alexander Starrett. And I liked this story very much. It's very arresting, and I'd recommend it. So there we go. That is my rather nerdy and pretentious bookshelf of Everyman's Library editions, and also a few New York Review of Books classics, and some Pushkin Press books at the end there. Let me know what you think. If you've read any of these, if you have any of these editions, if you have any of these books in different editions that you prefer, let me know what you think of them. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.